Window and door screening serves an important purpose in homes and businesses alike. It lets in fresh air while keeping leaves and other debris, not to mention bugs and birds, outside where they belong. So when a screen develops a tear or hole, it's smart to repair it as quickly as possible before the damage worsens. In the next few minutes, we'll show you how to repair small rips and tears and how to replace screens that are heavily damaged. The two main screen categories are metal and plastic or fiberglass. Each type has its advantages and disadvantages. Modern metal screens are most commonly made of aluminum or galvanized steel. While these metals are rust-proof, they may begin to develop unsightly corrosion after many years of exposure to the elements. Some older metal screening materials, however, have been known to rust. If that starts to happen, the screen should be replaced, or eventually you can end up with rust stains on your window frames and siding. Then there are fiberglass screens. Since there isn't any metal in them, they will never corrode. Versions with ultrafine mesh also block some sun while allowing light to come through. The only real downside with fiberglass screens is that they're more prone to sagging over time than metal screens are. Also, while fiberglass is very strong, it isn't as strong as metal, so it's a bit more easily ripped or torn. Okay, now let's get into our repair techniques. If you place the screen on a flat surface, it'll be much easier to work with. You'll also want to wipe any dirt or mud from the frame with water or a mild household cleaning spray. Fixing a metal screen with a very small tear in it, that is about 1/4 of an inch or less, can easily be done using a small amount of clear household cement. Just apply the adhesive according to the package directions, let it dry, and presto! On a fiberglass screen, you can perform a quick fix on a small tear with an everyday sewing needle and some thread that matches the screen, just as you'd repair a piece of torn fabric. If you work carefully, the result will be barely noticeable. Now let's look at how to repair tears and holes up to about 3 inches in diameter. On a metal screen, this kind of damage can usually be patched with good results. If the damaged area of the screen is larger than about 3 inches, it's better to just replace the screen. We'll talk more about screen replacement procedures in a few minutes. To patch a metal screen, you can purchase a snap-on or self-stick repair patch, either of which are easily affixed in seconds. Or, if you have some spare screening material on hand, you can cut a patch out of that. Cutting your own patch may be the best method to use for irregularly shaped holes or tears. If you choose this approach, you'll need a utility knife, a tape measure, and a small measure of patience. If the screen is heavy duty, you may also need a pair of needle-nosed pliers. Measure the length and width of the damaged area of screen to figure out how large the patch should be. For small holes or tears like the one on our screen, the patch should be about 1/2 inch larger than the damaged area on all sides. For bigger holes, make the patch about 1 inch larger on all sides. Once you've cut out the patch, unravel a couple of strands from each edge and bend the remaining edges in at a 90-degree angle using either your fingers or a pair of needle-nosed pliers so that the patch looks like this. Then align the patch over the damaged area of the screen, slip the bent strands through the screening, and press them flat. That's all there is to it. Holes and large tears in fiberglass screens can be difficult to patch, so when a fiberglass screen has anything more than a tiny rip in it, experts usually recommend replacement as the best course of action. Now, as I said earlier, a large tear or other extensive damage necessitates replacing the whole screen, a straightforward process that just about any do-it-yourselfer can perform. Screen comes in different weights and color variations. For best results, use screening material that's as similar as possible to the original so that it matches your other screens, unless you plan on replacing them all. Screen is sold in different roll lengths and widths, so it's important to know the size of the screen being replaced before buying the new screen. Remember too that screen comes in different mesh sizes. It's important to choose mesh with holes small enough to prevent the tiniest insects commonly found in your area from getting into the house. In addition to the screen itself, you'll need some other tools and materials for screen replacement. The specific items you'll need will depend on the way the screen and frame are put together. The screen we'll be replacing is a typical fiberglass window screen that's held in an aluminum frame with a length of retainer spline. Spline, sometimes referred to as the screening line, is a vinyl, foam, or vulcanized rubber cording that fits into a channel around the frame's perimeter. Other supplies needed to replace a screen, such as this one, include some clamps and a tape measure, along with a screen rolling tool, also called a spline tool. A spline tool looks something like a mini pizza cutter, except that it has two small wheels, one on each end. One wheel has a convex edge for pushing screen into the frame channel. The other wheel has a concave edge for pushing in spline. You also need a cutting tool, a utility knife for metal screening, or scissors for fiberglass. The first step in screen replacement is to remove the old, damaged screen from the frame. Place the screen on a flat surface with the spline side up. Pry up an edge of each strip of spline with the tip of a screwdriver, pencil, nail punch, or some other pointed object. Do this carefully so you don't bend the frame out of shape. Pull the spline out of the channel and lift out the old screen. Use clamps to secure the frame to the work table, being sure to avoid covering the spline channel. Next, unroll the new screening material and lay it on top of the frame. Since screen is stored in rolls, it's likely to curl up upon unrolling. Placing the concave side down over the frame during the cutting and installation will make the screen easier to work with. If you're using metal screen, be careful not to cut your hands on the edges. When cutting the new screen, don't just cut it to the size of the frame. Factor in a few extra inches on each of the four sides so that you have some surplus mesh to hold on to when you put the screen in the frame. You don't have to measure the screen precisely because you'll trim away the excess later. When cutting the screen, it's helpful to cut the side that's attached to the roll first. Then place the piece back over the frame to determine how much, if any, length to cut from each of the three remaining sides. Once the replacement screen is cut, if you're replacing the spline, measure the channels in the frame and cut 4 pieces of new spline. Align the replacement screen with the frame with the concave side down so that the rows of mesh squares are parallel to the edges of the frame. Then take the spline tool and, starting in one corner, use the convex wheel to force the screen into the channel along all 4 sides of the frame, being certain to keep the screen taut and the mesh squares parallel to the edges of the frame. For the best results, take your time and use short strokes with the wheel. If you don't do this carefully, you'll end up with the screen material being out of square in the frame. Now it's time to put in the spline. Use the concave wheel to press each of the 4 strips of spline into the channel over the screen. Begin each strip in a corner and make certain that the ends of each strip press firmly against the adjoining ones. Don't leave any empty space or insects may be able to squeeze through it. Sometimes pushing the spline into the corners can be a bit tricky. If so, using a rubber mallet and a shim will be helpful. When all 4 strips of spline are in place, carefully cut away the excess screen. Pop the frame back in the window or door, and you're all done. Before we wrap up, let's take a quick look at a couple of screen-related preservation concerns: cleaning and painting. If you've ever had to clean a window or door screen, you know that to do an effective job, you need to use very different methods than you'd use to wash a window or dust a piece of furniture. Cleaning the dirt out of all those little holes can make for a frustrating experience indeed. That is, unless you know the right techniques to use. To clean dirty screen mesh, first try vacuuming it with an upholstery nozzle. If that isn't sufficient, use a stiff brush to gently brush off the dirt. One final note: don't try to paint the mesh screen itself. To put it bluntly, trying to paint screen mesh is a big waste of time and money and paint. If the screen is rusted or corroded, it's a lot easier to just replace it.